Would the Honourable First Minister please proceed with his statement?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, today is the 100th anniversary of a battle that occurred during one of the bloodiest wars in the history of humankind, a battle that turned the world's attention to Canada. It occurred on the blood-soaked escarpment of Vimy Ridge in France, where soldiers from every corner of our nation and many from our province accomplished what other nations could not. They defeated the enemy, they turned the tide in the war, they paved the way for ultimate victory. Canadians did that, Manitobans did that. Les Canadiens ont fait cela, les Manitobains ont fait cela. And that is why our victory at Vimy Ridge is regarded by many as the moment when Canada stood on its own, the moment when Canada became a nation. But it came, Madam Speaker, at such a high cost. More than 10,000 Canadian soldiers were killed or wounded in that battle alone. Soldiers from all over our country, from all across our great province. On a per capita basis, no other province suffered a greater loss in the Great War than Manitoba. And that is no doubt related to the fact that a higher proportion of Manitobans volunteered for service than from any other province. When the call came, they answered, and we still do. When Manitobans see a problem, we are the first to lend a hand. When we see a challenge, we face it together, and we never turn our back on those in need. Parce que nous sommes confrontés à des défis ensemble. That's why we consistently lead the nation in volunteerism, in the support of charitable causes. It should not be lost on anyone that while this magnificent temple of democracy was being constructed, at that same time, thousands of young men from Manitoba, many in their teens, were fighting for their lives at Vimy Ridge. Their sacrifice is brilliantly depicted just above the north doors to this chamber on the Brangwyn mural, which depicts Canadian Army life in France in World War I. It portrays tragedy and loss, but it also features flowers to show the optimism of the coming of peace. It is impossible for any of us in this room to fully grasp the terror that these young men experienced at Vimy Ridge. The horror, inhumanity, the sacrifice of war are beyond the ability of any of us to fully comprehend. That may explain why very few veterans who returned from the battles of World War I and World War II ever spoke of these wars again. Their memories were too painful to share. On November 11th of each year, we hear the phrase, "Lest we forget," and I can say without hesitation that here in Manitoba, we have never, nor will we ever forget the sacrifices made by our brave men and women in uniform. We will never forget. Les Manitobains n'ont jamais oublié les sacrifices faits par nos braves hommes et femmes en uniforme. Nous n'oublierons jamais. The sacrifices they made were, are, and will always be for us, for all of us, who too often take for granted the freedoms we enjoy today. And that is why our province is in the process of naming over 8,000 geographic features in honor of every Manitoban who was a casualty of World War I. Earlier today, I was honored to participate in a ceremony where we named geographic features after 13 young men who died in battle in the Great War. 11 of those brave souls died at Vimy Ridge. It is also important, Madam Speaker, to note that not all of these courageous young men were born in Canada. One was born in England, one born in Sweden, one born in Iceland, and another born in the United States. But they all fought and died for Canada. Madam Speaker, every day should be a day of remembrance, and as we commemorate the enormous sacrifices that were made on our behalf on the desolate, blood-soaked battlefield of Vimy Ridge, I would ask that all members in this chamber rise now and join together in a moment of silence. Merci, Madame.
Please, is there leave for a moment of silence? Leave has been granted.